Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we remember the blood soaked soil of Amritsar. We remember the cries of the innocent. We remember April 13, 1919. Not because it's a date in history books, but because it's a scar, a wound that has never been healed. Over a century has passed since the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, since Brigadier General Dyer ordered his troops to open fire on unarmed men, women, and children who had gathered peacefully inside a walled garden to protest. Official British records claimed 379 dead. Indian sources put the figure at over 1,000. But the numbers are sterile. What matters is the silence that followed the gunfire. A silence the British Empire never truly broke. And here is the verdict. In 106 years, despite repeated demands from India, from British MPs, and from survivors' dissidents, British government has never issued a formal apology for the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Never. Yes, they have expressed regret, they have offered condolences, they have used words like monstrous, distressing, deeply shameful, but the one word that could begin hearing, sorry, was never being said officially by the British Crown or the government. Let's look at the record. Winston Churchill in 1920 called the massacre monstrous, but it was a condemnation of the act, not an apology for the empire. Queen Elizabeth II, during her 1997 visit to the memorial, called it a distressing episode. She laid a wreath, she observed silence, but no apology came. David Cameron, in 2013, the first ever sitting British Prime Minister to visit the site, described the massacre deeply shameful, but said, and I quote, we must learn from our history and not rewrite. Theresa May in 2019 expressed deep regrets in the House of Commons, calling it a shameful scar on the Indian British history. But again, no formal apology. The Archbishop of Canterbury in 2019 did say he was ashamed and sorry, but later clarified he spoke not for the government but as a religious leader. So why not apologize? The reasons are whispered behind the curtains of diplomacy. The fear of legal and financial repercussions, the reluctance to set a precedent, the belief that an apology for every colonial atrocity would open floodgates, and the ever convenient line, we cannot rewrite history. But history isn't asking to be rewritten. India isn't asking for reparations. It's asking for recognition. It's asking for acknowledgement. It's asking the former colonial power to say that the one thing victims and their dissidents have been waiting 100 years to hear. We are sorry. Let's be clear, this silence has not gone unchallenged. India has asked again and again and again. Here's, Here is the documented trail of calls for an apology. In 1997, during Queen Elizabeth II's visit to India, the Jallianwala Bagh Shaheed Parivar Samiti staged a hunger strike at Rajghat, explicitly demanding a formal apology. The Queen laid a wreath. That's it. In 2013, when PM David Cameron visited Amritsar, Indian leaders like Amrinder Singh publicly reiterated demands for an apology. That call was echoed again in 2019. In 2017, London Mayor Sadiq Khan, after visiting the site, publicly supported a formal British apology. Indian officials and activists rallied behind that statement. In 2019, on the centenary of the massacre, the momentum surged. The Punjab Assembly passed a unanimous resolution demanding a formal apology from the British Empire. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Rahul Gandhi both paid homage to the victims. While not diplomatically formal, their words were loud with expectation. Author and MP Shashi Tharoor led one of the most visible campaigns urging the British government to say the word they refused to utter. Over 80 British MPs, under the pressure from Indian diaspora organizations, signed a letter to Downing Street demanding a formal apology. And the JBSPS, representing the dissidents of the martyrs, said it again. Apologize not for us, but for the history. In 2022, after the passing of Queen Elizabeth II, JBSPS made a renewed call. This time to King Charles III, asking him to acknowledge and apologize on behalf of the monarchy. In 2025, just days before the 106th anniversary, British MP Bob Blackman stood up in Parliament calling for an official apology, one supported by Indian diaspora groups and echoed by civil society leaders in both nations. And yet, there is no apology, no statement, no closure. Even now, there is no definitive count of how many times India has formally requested an apology because many of these appeals have been public, political, emotional, but not always channeled through official diplomatic lines. But the intent is undeniable. The message is clear and sharp. India has asked loudly, publicly, and repeatedly, and the British has looked away. To those in power in London, this is not about reopening old wounds. This is about finally beginning to close them with truth, with decency, with humility. The verdict is clear tonight. Until Britain says the word sorry, the century old massacre will not be history. It will remain injustice. It will remain a living injustice, a silent indictment of the empire, and a reminder that sometimes it's not the act itself, but the refusal to atone that keeps the wound alive.